Genesis was cleared to sell nearly $1.3 billion worth of GBTC earlier this month. How will that affect Bitcoin going forward? And when might that affect Bitcoin going forward? Welcome back to another weekend episode of Trade Cave. Let's take a dive into this. So I have been getting some comments about this specific scenario, this situation that's been happening, looking for updates. I don't necessarily have any updates right now, but I have been looking into it. There isn't any new news since this February 14 report that they have been cleared in their bankruptcy court to sell these assets. But there was something very, very similar that happened with FTX, where they had GBTC and they were cleared to sell it and they sold it. And it had a clear effect on the market that we can look at and analyze and determine how this may also affect um, Bitcoin and its prices. So let's take a look first at what happened before. So FTX, they were cleared to sell it right here, court approval. This is on CoinDesk. So FTX, they also went bankrupt. They also had a lot of GBTC and they sold it. They got court approval to sell this back in November 29th, 2023. They were given permission to make this sale. Then they started selling. They didn't start selling it until January 11th. So nearly 2 months later. We just got approval about 2 weeks ago for Genesis to start selling. So that gives you a little bit of the timeline. And this is actually very interesting with how that 2 month period may line up with this year. And we're going to talk about that here in a second too, which aligns really nicely with cycles and what I'm thinking about Bitcoin right now. But we're going to hold that off for a moment. Keep watching to figure out. You probably already figured it out, honestly. But let's take a look here. So they sold about $1 billion worth of Grayscale. Now, back when it was first awarded that they were allowed to, it was only worth about 873 million. Then when they did sell it, it was worth about $1 billion. All right. Anyways, they started selling on January 11th, and they continued selling it through the 22nd, I believe. I believe that's when this came out. Yeah, the 22nd is when it was done being sold. So they sold it by the 22nd. So from the 11th until the 22nd, 2nd of January of 2024, FTX sold $1 billion worth of GBTC. Now let's look at the chart here. This is GBTC. This is January 11th when they converted to an ETF. And this is the 22nd when that article came out and said that they had sold $1 billion worth of it. And you can see the price went from 45.50s in the 45.50s, 45, yeah, 43.50, excuse me, all the way down to $35. Pretty significant drop, right? And that was exactly in that time frame. Let's look at Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin. Did the exact same thing. It went from 49, almost 50,000 on January 11th when those ETFs were approved and when the GBTC one was converted to an ETF and when FTX started selling. And it went from 50,000. You see that huge wick on top from where they started selling. Second day, it really ramped up. And by the end of it, on the 22nd, which is right here, right before things turned around when they were done selling, it came all the way down to 39,000. So we went from 50,000 to 39,000, a little bit over a $10,000 sell-off in Bitcoin. On the broader chart, it doesn't look like much, whoops, but $10,000 sell-off. So Genesis just got cleared to do the exact same thing. They're going to sell about 30% more Bitcoin than FTX did. And they're going to be selling it. I mean, if price increases between now and the time that they do sell it, that could be an even higher dollar amount. Anyways, so they're going to be selling about 30% more. So we might see a 30% greater dip than 10%. So we're talking about possibly a 13% drop, or in this case, 13% greater. So it dropped about 10, almost 11,000. So we're looking at about a $13,000 drop based on a very similar situation where a bankrupt company sold $1 billion worth of GBTC in a matter of days. Genesis is cleared to do the same thing, and they have 1.3 billion dollars worth of shares of GBTC that they will be dumping in probably a short amount of time, given how high the price of Bitcoin currently is. So if this happens tomorrow, it's not happening tomorrow, but if it happened tomorrow, we would drop from 51,000 all the way down to somewhere around 37,000. So we've come right back down to this spot right here, right where this is here, right about where the selling stopped with the FTX sale, because it's significantly more and price is not significantly higher. So we'd be right back down to that spot, which would line up nice with my ascending channel here. That'd be great. I bet you it would also line up decently with the Gaussian channel. Let me take a look. Let's turn on the Gaussian channel. I don't like the 1-day one. Let's do the 3-day one. It's a little, yep, boom, lines up perfectly with the 3-day Gaussian channel. I like the 3-day. It's a little smoother for those longer term moves. But anyways, lines up nicely with that. I'm going to put a line right here, and we're going to make this a fancy color. Let's make it like a purple. That is in 4, and we're going to lock it down. That's where I'm thinking price will come if they sell, if Genesis sells all of its GBTC in short order, just like FTX did. Now, the thing that's very exciting about this and interesting and leads into my theory of what is going to happen with the Bitcoin cycle is the sell-off into or slightly after the halving, which if this timeline holds similar to the FTX timeline of where they were given permission in November, started selling in January, which was nearly 2 months. It was like 6 weeks later they started selling. If that's what Genesis does, and they start selling about 6 weeks after, so that'd be about 4 weeks from now. We're looking at 18th, we're looking right around April, right around the beginning of April, meaning we've got about 5, almost 6 weeks before they would start selling if they held to a similar timeline as FTX. And at the moment, we don't have any reason to believe they would do otherwise. Maybe they could do it faster. Maybe it takes them a longer period of time. Maybe they're waiting for after the halving to get a better price. We don't know. I'm simply going off of what previously happened from a company in the exact same situation with a very similar amount of GBTC to sell that was approved by a court for the sale, what they did. That doesn't mean that's what is going to happen here, but it is basically the exact same case that FTX went through that Genesis is going through right now, and their time frame was from the ruling to the sale about 6 weeks. So that happened February 15th. So if we're looking at about 6 weeks, this week would be second week. March 7th would be the third, fourth, fifth, sixth week is March 24th, right around the beginning of April, or March 28th, excuse me, right around the beginning of April. So they'll be selling right at the beginning of April. What happens in April, early April this year? The halving. So they could very likely start selling their GBTC right as the halving is happening, which would come in just before the halving and be right around here. I have the halving on this chart. I don't have it marked on this chart. Hold on. Let me go to my Bitstamp one. There it is. So we could see a drop of $13,000 or more in Bitcoin price somewhere between the 28th of March and the halving around April 18th. So anywhere in this time frame, we're looking for a $13,000 drop, right? Somewhere between here and there. And maybe even going a little bit beyond. Let's go till May 1st. How about that? May 3rd. Coin probably to that $38,000 level. And honestly, that's probably going to be the last time we see Bitcoin under $40,000 until the next crypto winter. We might not even see it go under that next winter either, depending on what the current fair value price of Bitcoin is at that time. So it could be the last time we see Bitcoin under $40,000 ever. So keep that in mind. Now, if price jumps up big time between now and then, that 13,000 will look significantly less. Maybe we'll just come back down to 50. But with the way the price action has stalled out, the way Bitcoin likes to do these big explosive moves in one direction or the other, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it come down below this trend line for a few days before bouncing back up after the half. So that's the only update I've got right now on the Genesis GBTC sale. I just noticed that very close similarities between what's happening with that and with FTX and how that affected Bitcoin. I hope that was informational. I hope that gave you some perspective on what could occur in relation to this story and how it may play out and how it might just give us that last dip that we've been waiting for before the halving or going into the halving and slightly after the halving. So keep that in mind. Watch the charts, pay attention, keep up to date on the news, see when they start selling that stuff, and be ready for a drop. And don't be surprised if you see one that is around $13 to $15,000 in size for Bitcoin, and what, $10 to $15 in size for GBTC. That's all I've got for you right now. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you appreciate this type of content and like to see more. And have a profitable day.